Hello there, my name's Mark and welcome to the Whisky Critic for another whisky video. Although today we're not doing a review, today we're going to be answering some questions that have been posted on my Facebook page. So the first question we have there is from Chris, and he asks, is it okay to add single malt whisky to your latte? I'm a big believer that you drink your whisky how you like to drink it. However, that I would say that for a good single malt should be enjoyed as is. It's not a drink for mixing, and it's not a drink for adding to coffee and things like that. So if I give anything 1 star, 1.5 stars, then feel free to add that to whatever you like because it needs the help. When it comes to blended whisky, there are some outstanding blended whiskies on the market. A good blended whisky will outperform a poor to average single malt any day of the week. And we're going to go into blended whiskies in a future videos because they don't get the credit sometimes that they deserve. However, your cheap, low-level blended whisky is probably more adaptable for putting into coffees or cokes, orange juices or whatever, things like that. I don't go into whiskey cocktails very much, but so I would say in answer to that question, if you've got a good single malt, it really should be enjoyed as is. If it's not so good or it's a cheap blend, then by all means add it to whatever you need to, because like I say, often the whisky needs a bit of help for its enjoyment. So I hope that answers your question, Chris. My next question is from Steve. Steve asks a very good question here. He asks, why is it different distilleries produce different flavours? And that's a very hard question to answer in a very small sentence. Basically, all parts of the whisky producing process have an effect on flavour. The type of water that the distillery uses will have an effect on flavour. The type of grain that the distillery uses has an effect on flavour. The mechanistic nature of the distillery has an effect on flavour. The pot stills have an effect on flavour. The height of the pot stills, the size of the pot stills, the angle of the pot still, they all have an effect on flavour. But personally, in my opinion, the biggest effect on flavour comes from maturation. That's the point when the whisky's put into the cask and is left to sit and do its thing. What actually happens in that cask is still a bit of a mystery. People have done PhDs on the subject, and we still don't know really what happens to that whisky once inside that cask. What we do know is it comes in and out of the wood, it permeates the wood, and it produces these lovely, rich flavours. But again, it depends on what cask you use. As I've said in previous videos, a European cask will give you a more bitter, a rougher type flavour, whereas the American white oak barrels will give you vanilla, sweet, honey flavours. And most distilleries will use ex-bourbon casks. The reason for this is because in America, when you're producing whiskey and bourbon, by law, you have to use new casks. You can't refill your casks, so they get new casks and they char them inside, char the staves, and that gives them their flavour. Hence why American whiskey bourbons tend to be a bit darker in colour. We don't have those laws over here, and most other whiskey producing nations don't have such laws. So we can refill our casks. So we tend to go over to Jack Daniels or other bourbon companies and say, we'll buy your casks off you, your old casks, because they can't use them anymore. And then they're used in Scotland, in England, in Thailand, in Canada, wherever, to produce their whiskies. So ex-bourbon casks are very, very popular. At what point this became the norm, I'm not actually sure, but it's very popular for most whiskey companies now. So most whiskey companies will use ex-bourbon casks, and depending on the quality and where they get their casks from will also have an impact on flavour. You then have different whiskey finishes. So that is where the whiskey is matured in an ex-bourbon cask, and then at the last 1, 2, 3 years, sometimes even 6 months of its life, it's decanted into an ex-Madeira cask, an ex-port cask, an ex-sherry cask. Sherry finishes are quite popular. And then it will finish its maturation within one of those other casks. This gives you different flavours, and it merges different flavours with the current whisky as it's matured. I think that when a whisky says it's finished for 6 months in a sherry cask, I'm always a bit dubious as to whether or not it was because they tasted it in the bourbon cask, it didn't taste that good, so they chucked it in the sherry cask just to finish off. 6 months seems a bit negligible to me. But if they really want to do a finish, then it will be in there for a bit longer. So in answer to your question, Steve, there is no one answer. It depends at what point of the whisky distillery you personally feel has the biggest impact. Like I say, for me and for most other whisky critics, they believe it's the maturation side of things when it's in that barrel. And then that can depend on what casks they are, where they've got them from, what they've been used for previously. It will all depend on the different flavours. So that's pretty much the end of this question answer thing. If you have any more questions whatsoever, please feel free to post them on Facebook, post them on Twitter, and I'll endeavour to do another video shortly with some more answers for you. Until next time, cheerio.